Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a myth soaked in wine, lit by moonlight, and utterly unapologetic in its weirdness. You've probably heard of chariots pulled by horses, or maybe even winged beasts if you're fancy. But a chariot pulled by tigers? That's Dionysus for you, the god of wine, theater, madness, and saying, let's make this even weirder. And no, you probably wouldn't survive a ride in it. The tigers don't stop for red lights or logic. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in a vineyard at the edge of dawn. The mist clings low to the ground, and grapevines stretch in every direction like gossiping villagers. There's something expectant in the air. And then, from beyond the rows of vines, you hear it. Not hooves, not wheels, but the heavy, padded thud of enormous paws, and they're getting closer. Through the mist comes a shape. First the glint of gold, then the shimmer of wine-colored silk, and then a chariot. Gleaming, impractical, as if someone asked, what if a drinking goblet could fly? And in front of it, not horses, not oxen, but two tigers, striped, slow-moving, absurdly majestic. They prowl rather than pull. They glide rather than gallop. And standing in the chariot? Dionysus. He doesn't grip the reins. He doesn't need to. The tigers go where he wants, because of course they do. He's wearing a robe that might have once been white, but now looks like it's soaked in starlight and leftover wine. His hair is wavy and far too shiny for someone who just spent the night inventing hangovers. He doesn't speak. He just smiles. And the vines lean toward him. That's the thing about Dionysus. He's not like the other gods. You don't see him hurling lightning bolts or polishing war helmets. He's chaos in the form of charm. He appears where things are about to go sideways, a party teetering on the edge of ecstasy, a quiet town that's just a little too proud, a vineyard where the grapes ferment before they're picked. He shows up in the middle of it, tigers and all, and says something like, let's make this interesting. You walk slowly alongside the chariot, your feet soft in the dewy grass. The tigers eye you, but not with hunger, more like curiosity. One yawns. Its teeth are as long as your forearm. You nod politely. The tiger does not nod back, rude, but understandable. As Dionysus passes, the air shifts. It smells like old wine and fresh figs, and a hint of something electric, like you're one toast away from losing your name. You follow him deeper into the vines, and with each step, the world gets looser. The trees sway in rhythm with music you can't quite hear. The clouds above start curling into spirals, as if they too have had a bit too much nectar. Your feet don't feel heavy anymore. They feel like suggestions. And Dionysus, still smiling. Because the chariot isn't really about transportation. It's about arrival, statement, presence. Why walk in when you can glide in, drawn by striped chaos? Cats wearing a robe that probably whispers secrets when it moves. The image is ridiculous, over the top, unnecessary, and that's exactly the point. The Greeks, even in their wildest myths, understood performance. Theater wasn't just something you watched, it was something you lived. And Dionysus? He was both playwright and plot. Twist. As the chariot curves around a hill, the sun begins to rise behind it. The light catches the gold trim, the tiger fur, the gentle smirk of a god who knows he doesn't have to prove anything. You follow. Because how could you not? The vines part. The mist lifts. And somewhere in the distance, a flute begins to play itself. And you realize the ride's just beginning. You follow the prints, wide, soft indentations in the grass that could only belong to something large, feline, and entirely too confident to care about stepping lightly. The trail winds between fig trees and low stone walls, looping casually, like someone very theatrical is making an entrance that takes exactly as long as it needs to. You feel like you're walking into a dream that doesn't want to end, and in the center of it all is Dionysus, robe trailing, curls bouncing, tigers gliding like oversized house cats with a flair for the dramatic. But this god? He didn't start this way, you remember, because everyone forgets. Dionysus wasn't always the bold god in the shimmering chariot. He began much smaller and significantly more confusing. You step into the memory like it's waiting for you. It's quieter here, softer. You're in a shadowy room, part cave, part nursery, part mythological loophole. You see baby Dionysus swaddled in a goat hide blanket, which, frankly, is not as cozy as it sounds. There's no crib, no lullaby, just strange hushes and hurried hands. Why? Because his mother, Semele, died. Exploded, actually. It's what happens when you date Zeus and then say, "Prove you're really him." Spoiler, he does. With lightning. So now the baby is technically homeless. God-blooded, motherless. Divine, but squishy. And what does Zeus do? He does what any responsible father would do. He sews the fetus into his own thigh. You blink. Yes, you heard that right. His thigh. Apparently, when you're the king of gods, you don't do babysitting the normal way. You gestate in your leg like a mythological marsupial. And so, Dionysus is reborn. Technically from fire, practically from a leg. You can't help but whisper to yourself, you sure wouldn't survive childbirth in mythology. Once thigh-born and thoroughly confusing, baby Dionysus is smuggled away, because Hera, Zeus's wife, is understandably not thrilled. So he's hidden in the hills raised by nymphs and disguised as a girl for a while. It's a very long game of divine hide-and-seek. You pass through another grove, and the scene shifts again. Now he's older, awkward, still finding his footing. But there's something in his eyes. Mischief, melancholy, movement. You watch as he discovers wine, not just as a drink, but as an idea, as a transformation. The way a grape can become something wild and unpredictable. And just like that, Dionysus begins to change. He becomes the god of dualities. Joy and madness, celebration and grief, the vine and the blade. He's reborn into a role no one was expecting. A god who doesn't throw thunder but throws parties that become religion. You glance over and realize the tigers are gone, replaced for a moment by leopards, deer, and wild goats. His entourage shifts constantly, like his moods. He's already attracting satyrs and maenads, beings who dance until they collapse and scream at the moon for fun. You sit beneath a fig tree and think about how strange it is that a god born from chaos can carry such gentleness in his expression, like he knows something you don't. Like he remembers what it feels like to be almost erased. That's the thing. Dionysus isn't just about wine and revelry. He's about second chances. Regrowth. What comes after the ruin. And maybe that's why. He rides in with tigers, not to impress, but to remind you that beauty doesn't have to be tame, that survival doesn't have to be quiet, that being different, weird, dreamy, laughable, might just be divine. You stand again, brushing fig, leaves from your shoulder. The mist thickens a little, sweet and cool. You hear distant laughter, not loud, just echoing. And over it, the faintest rumble. The tigers are back, which means the chariot is too. And Dionysus, reborn from fire and thigh, orphan and god, is ready to take you further. Because this isn't just a journey through myth, it's a procession, and you're already walking in it. The laughter gets closer, swirling on the wind like incense smoke that forgot to fade. You follow the sound, not because you have to, but because it's the kind of laugh that seems to pull at your ribs, like a song you don't know the lyrics to but still somehow hum along with. And then you see him again. Dionysus, of course. The chariot has stopped for now, idling casually in a clearing. The tigers stretch languidly, licking their paws like they've just conquered a kingdom and are now pondering a nap. Dionysus lounges like someone who invented the art of lounging, reclining sideways across the chariot with a bunch of grapes in one hand and absolutely no sense of urgency in the other. He sees you, and he raises an eyebrow, as if to say, "Took you long enough." You step closer, careful not to make any sudden moves, not because you're afraid, but because time seems a bit wobbly here, and you're not quite sure if this is morning or last Thursday. And then, movement. The clearing fills slowly, not with fog or animals, but with people, or something like people. A slowly growing parade of dancers and followers and wide-eyed wanderers like yourself. They emerge from behind trees, out of tall grass, even from the sky. No explanation, just arrival. The Dionysus has begun. That's what they call it. The sacred procession, the one Dionysus leads everywhere he goes. It's not a parade in the normal sense. There are no balloons, no precision march trumpets. But there are drums, and bare feet, and robes half-tied, and someone with panpipes who clearly didn't practice, but somehow still fits the vibe. You watch it unfold. A satyr with goat legs plays a lyre out of tune. A maenad spins so fast her hair becomes a weather system. Someone throws flower petals that suspiciously look like they were stolen from someone else's altar. And yet, there's no chaos here. Not really. It's wild, but it's coherent. It's dancing on the edge, and somehow staying upright. And then, of course, Dionysus stands. No fanfare, no lightning. Just stands. And the entire procession seems to exhale. He steps down from the chariot, barefoot in the dewy grass, and everyone makes a path like water parting around a boat. He walks through them with that gentle, knowing smile, the kind that makes you feel like maybe you haven't made as many mistakes as you thought. You follow naturally. How could you not? The procession begins to move. Slowly at first, like a great beast waking up from a long nap. The dancers lead the way, arms raised, heads back. The satyrs hop and tumble. A woman with ivy in her hair starts singing a song. That might just be the history of the world told backward. And you find yourself in step, not knowing the rhythm, but matching it anyway. Like your feet have joined an ancient memory they didn't know they had. You think, how long has this procession existed? Long before cities. Long before temples. Maybe even before names. Because Dionysus isn't just a god of drink. He's the god of movement, of transitions, of what happens when you stop resisting and just go. You pass through olive groves now. The air smells like sun-warmed stone and rosemary. The sky above is swirling slightly, as if unsure whether to be dusk or dawn. Time in the Dionysus has a different flavor, less like a clock, more like honey. Thick, golden, directionless. You look ahead and see the tigers walking again, slow, regal, half drowsy. They're not pulling the chariot anymore. It's moving of its own accord, wheels just barely grazing, the ground like it's shy about touching it. Someone hands you a fig. Someone else ties a ribbon to your wrist without asking. And suddenly you're laughing too. Not loud, not sharp, just the kind of soft laugh that bubbles up when you realize you've been trying way too hard for way too long. You breathe in deeply, and for a moment, you're not walking with gods. You're just walking, free, aimless, joyful. And at the center of it all, Dionysus, tiger chariot and all, doesn't lead from in front. He leads by letting go. And somehow you understand exactly what that means. The path bends slightly now, curving around a hill draped in blooming vines and half-forgotten statues. Broken arms, missing noses, and stone eyes that look like they've seen too much revelry and politely chosen not to comment. You walk with the Dionysus, your feet warm from the earth and your heart strangely light. The music isn't music anymore. It's sensation. A thrum in your bones. A breeze that nudges your shoulder in rhythm. The kind of sound that doesn't ask to be heard. It is, and that's enough. And here's where it gets a little stranger. Because Dionysus is changing outfits again. One moment he's in deep indigo with a crown of ivy. The next, saffron yellow robes that billow in wind you don't remember existing. A minute later, russet tunic, no shoes, laughing at a joke that no one told out loud. The man is fashion-forward, time-fluid, and deeply unconcerned with continuity. But his chariot? Still there, still gleaming, still tiger-drawn. You ask yourself, because someone has to, why tigers? It's not exactly practical, not native to. Greece, not easily parked, not particularly manageable in traffic. Most gods ride horses, or clouds, or float dramatically for effect. But not Dionysus. He chooses tigers. Animals no Greek had ever seen in the wild. Beasts associated with far-off lands, golden jungles, and night eyes that don't blink, and that's the point. You remember a story, whispered to you by an old priest who wore too much perfume, and always seemed like he was halfway to tipsy. He said Dionysus once traveled to the east, farther than anyone thought gods bothered going, past Persia, past India, past the part of maps that just say, "Here be weirdness." And there, he found the tigers. Some say he tamed them, others say they just liked his vibe. Either way, when he returned, he didn't bring back riches or spices or scrolls. He brought the drama. He brought tiger transport. Because nothing says, "I have arrived," quite like being pulled across continents by creatures that could eat you and instead just kind of vibe with you. You watch as one of the tigers yawns again. Huge teeth, pink tongue, total disinterest in everyone present. They don't obey Dionysus. They don't have to. They agree with him, and you start to understand something. The chariot isn't just a vehicle, it's a declaration. It says, "I am not from here." It says, "I do not follow your rules." It says, "Yes, I will be wearing a leopard print cape with no explanation." The tigers are symbols of wildness, of otherness, of the part of yourself that doesn't sit quietly through dinner when someone says something wrong. You walk a little closer to them, cautious but curious. Their fur glints gold where the sun hits. One of them meets your gaze, and in that look you see nothing threatening, just presence, intensity. The feline version of someone who's read your diary and still decided you're worth keeping around. You bow slightly. It doesn't bow back. Course not. It's a tiger. And suddenly you realize Dionysus didn't choose tigers for show. He chose them because they can't be owned. Can't be fully understood. Can't be trained out of their nature. Just like him. Just like you, maybe, on your best days. So when he steps back into the chariot, robes now glittering with something that looks suspiciously like fermented starlight, and the procession begins to roll again, you follow. Not because you're told to, but because you want to see what happens when someone who refuses to be tamed decides where the road goes next. You follow the chariot down a sloping path now, the earth soft underfoot, littered with fallen petals and old grape stems, leftovers from revelries past. The tigers don't gallop, they don't prance, they just glide as if the ground itself is slightly flattered to be stepped on by something so unapologetically majestic. Behind you, the Dionysus continues, louder now but still somehow gentle. Maenads with vine-wrapped staffs, satyrs clacking hooves against stones, dancers whose steps don't always match the music, but seem deeply committed to the idea of rhythm. Dionysus doesn't look back. He never does. Because this parade isn't for him. It's for the people who follow him, for those who need a little madness to remember how to feel alive. You've stopped questioning the logic of it all by now. That's probably for the best. Logic left 3 vineyards ago, and the only thing that's made sense since then is the warm breeze and the glint of tiger fur in the sun. You reach a plateau, and there, spread out before you, is a gathering. No, a celebration. Dozens, maybe. Hundreds of people, sprawled in the grass, reclining on cloaks, pouring wine from jugs that never seem to empty. The laughter here is round, full, the kind that starts deep in the stomach and doesn't ask permission. Someone plays a flute. With their nose, someone else juggles figs and philosophical questions at the same time. And in the middle of it all, the chariot, parked like a centerpiece. Not in a grand way, but like a favorite chair that everyone is quietly glad exists. The tigers lie beside it now, one stretched out, the other curled like an enormous cat that believes it owns this hilltop. You wander through the crowd. A woman hands you a bowl of pomegranate seeds. You don't ask why. They taste like dusk and possibility. And then someone leans toward you and says, with absolute sincerity, "Did you know this is where the first wine glass was invented?" By accident. You nod. You absolutely did not know that. But it fits. Because Dionysus isn't just a god of celebration. He's a god of the invention of celebration. Of the moment when things shift from ordinary to deliciously unhinged. You think back. How did all this start? A chariot in the vines, tigers, a robe that changed colors, a story that walked instead of told itself, and now you're here, lounging, beside strangers who feel like half-forgotten dreams, sipping something dark and sweet from a carved wooden cup. It could be wine. It could be magic. It's probably both. Across the clearing, Dionysus stands. Not dramatically, just there. He raises a hand, and the music shifts. Not louder, not faster, just deeper, like the heartbeat of the earth picked up a drum. The crowd responds instantly, not in unison, not on cue, but like a field of tall grass blown by the same breeze. Maenads begin to sway. Satyrs tap their hooves in time. Someone starts spinning slowly, their arms like vines reaching for stars you can't quite see yet. And you let go of the questions, of the timeline, of whatever version of yourself was trying to hold it all together. You lean back in the grass and look up. The sky is a dusky indigo now, the kind that promises something wild is just over the next hill. And in that moment, surrounded by madness, music, and motion, you understand. This isn't just a party. It's a procession of souls remembering how to be unguarded. And at its center is a chariot drawn by tigers, reminding everyone that joy too can have claws. You're not sure how long you've been lying there staring at the sky. Could be minutes. Could be a couple of lifetimes. Time in the presence of Dionysus has the consistency of grape jelly. Wobbly, sweet, and absolutely unhelpful if you're trying to measure it. The music never really stops. It just changes shape. Now it's drums that sound like distant thunder. Now it's laughter. Now it's someone clinking a cup against their forehead while trying to explain the meaning of joy using only interpretive dance and a fig. You sit up slowly. The ground beneath you feels warm, like it's been steeped in sun and stories. You stretch, and that's when you notice. The chariot is moving again. But this time, it's not the tigers in front. It's a parade of them. You blink. More than 2. 6. Maybe 7. All of them striped and massive, their paws silent on the earth, their eyes half-lidded like they've just woken from a nap inside the concept of elegance. Where did they come from? No one says, because no one asks. This is not the kind of place where you question tiger logistics. You stand and begin to walk, following the great procession as it moves through olive trees and fields of lavender that blush as the wind brushes through them. The chariot rolls slowly, golden wheels barely touching the ground. The tigers don't pull it so much as glide in front of it, like ceremonial escorts. You walk beside them, not too close. Just enough to feel the air ripple when they move. One of them turns its head, lazily, and you meet its gaze. It's not threatening. It's not even curious. It's just aware. That tiger has seen things. That tiger probably remembers when the first grape turned into wine and whispered, "Let's cause a little trouble." You wonder again why Dionysus chose tigers. Why not oxen, like Demeter? Why not swans, like Aphrodite? Why not literally any animal native to Greece? And the answer walks in front of you. Because tigers don't explain themselves. They arrive. They exist. They demand nothing but space, and in doing so, they take it. You think about Dionysus himself, born in fire, raised in forests, swaddled in myth and contradiction. He is a god who doesn't conquer with thunder, but with invitation. He doesn't shout. He beckons. And the tigers are perfect for him. They don't charge. They prowl. They announce that something sacred is approaching, not with trumpets, but with the low, humming silence of reverence. You look ahead and see Dionysus standing so, tall in the chariot, arms wide, robe catching the wind like a second set of wings. He doesn't need reins. He never has. The tigers aren't obeying him. They're walking with him, as equals, as symbols. Of what? Of freedom. Of wildness that has chosen to be beautiful. You pass a small stream, and one of the tigers steps into it without hesitation, barely rippling. The water. The reflection is distorted, stripes blending into golden wheel spokes, Dionysus shimmering above it all, like the god of a world that dances slightly out of tune on purpose. You realize you're smiling, not the polite kind, the kind you make when something inside you unknots, and you remember what it feels like to want nothing except to keep going. The sun is low now. The sky bleeds peach and copper. The tigers don't slow, and neither do you, because this isn't a destination. This is the myth itself. Still walking, still unfolding, still pulled by creatures too majestic to tame and too quiet to follow anyone, but a god who whispers instead of commands. And somewhere, deep in the fading light, you hear Dionysus laugh. Not loudly, just enough to tell you, the next part is going to be even stranger. The light thins as the procession winds into a forest, the kind that doesn't appear on any map because it exists somewhere between myth and metaphor. The trees are tall, their trunks twisted like dancers frozen mid-spin. Vines curl lazily from branch to branch, heavy with grapes that seem too ripe for reality, too full of stories to just be fruit. You pass beneath their shade, and the world shifts again, quieter, closer. The drums have faded into distant heartbeats. The satyrs are hushed, their flutes tucked under their arms like sleeping children. Even the maenads now tread softly, their bare feet brushing the forest floor like whispers on silk. And still, the chariot rolls forward. It gleams more brightly now in the gloom, like it's lit from within. A kind of golden hush. The tigers step without hesitation, their massive paws making no sound at all, as if they know this place and have walked it in dreams. And perhaps they have, because in this part of the forest, reality softens. You begin to notice things. A rabbit wearing a crown of rosemary, a tree whose bark is etched with verses in languages you've never seen, but somehow feel like lullabies. A pool of water where your reflection grins before you do. And Dionysus. He hasn't spoken once, but his presence presses gently against everything here. Like a melody remembered, not heard. He leans against the edge of the chariot now, elbows resting casually, robe slightly askew like he's already halfway into the next celebration. You ask yourself, why not donkeys? It's a fair question. Donkeys were common, loyal, affordable, known to the Greeks. You could pull carts, goods, even gods if needed. They'd been used by priests and peasants alike, humble beasts of burden with solid reputations. But that's precisely why Dionysus didn't choose them. He isn't the god of the sensible. He's the god of the strange entrance, the unexpected decision, the beautiful chaos. And tigers, those elusive alien beasts from lands far beyond the Greek imagination, were the perfect vehicle for a god who is always somewhere else, who appears when things loosen, who arrives not when he's needed, but when people forget they needed him at all. Besides, a donkey doesn't shock you, but a tiger demands you notice. And isn't that the entire point of a divine chariot? Not just to carry, but to announce. Not just to move, but to say, something is happening now, and it does not care for your categories. You step lightly over a root and find yourself beside a small shrine tucked between two trees. It's old. The stone is mossy, the ivy thick. At its center is a relief, worn down, but you can just make out the shape. A chariot, a god, two tigers. Even here, even in this secret place, the story echoes. You reach out, press your fingers to the cold stone, and feel the hum beneath your skin. Like the forest remembers the weight of those paws, the shimmer of those wheels, the soft laughter of a god who never asks permission to arrive. Behind you, the procession slows. You glance back. The chariot has paused. Dionysus is looking upward now, at a shaft of moonlight piercing the trees. His face is serene, not triumphant, not distant. Just here, just now. And in the quiet, you realize something else. This chariot, it never had to make sense. It only had to move you. And it has, from logic to legend, from thought to feeling, from the outside, in. You take one last look at the shrine, then turn back toward the glowing wheels and the tiger-padded trail, and once more you follow. Because even in the hush of sacred woods, even in the quiet where myths grow moss, Dionysus is still in motion, and so are you. The forest thins slowly, like a dream you're waking from reluctantly, one leaf at a time. You step through the last veil of hanging vines and emerge into something entirely new. Not a meadow, not a city, but something in between. A kind of in-between place, as if the world wasn't sure what to grow here. So it planted memories instead. Scattered stone columns half buried in grass. Amphorae tipped over like they had too much fun at last year's harvest. A broken statue of a lion grinning at nothing, and at the center of it all, Dionysus, sitting on the edge of his chariot like a cat about to tip a vase off the table, just because he can. This, you realize, isn't a forest anymore. It's a stage, not a grand one. No curtains, no spotlights. Just space, attention, expectation. The kind of place where something either begins or ends. And Dionysus, true to form, blurs the two so thoroughly that you forget to care which it is. You wander closer, stepping over cracked tiles and forgotten sandals. A breeze carries the faint scent of olives, myrrh, and something else. Mischief, maybe, or history. Or just the lingering perfume of a party that was so good it decided to live here. And then he speaks. Not with words, don't be silly, but with gesture. A single flick of the hand, a half-raised eyebrow, a tilt of the head that says, "Now, watch this. You brace yourself. The tigers rise. They don't roar. They reveal." As they step forward, the ground around the chariot begins to shift. slowly, like the earth is stretching after a long nap. The chariot doesn't move. The world does. Vines slither across stones. Grapes grow midair, ripening in seconds. The broken statue finishes a shrug it started 100 years ago. And the chariot, once golden, now glowing, begins to rise, not dramatically, just enough to make you doubt the ground beneath it. It hovers slightly, as if the rules of physics had a drink and decided to take the afternoon off. And you realize, this is no ordinary vehicle. This is not just a chariot, pulled by exotic beasts. This is a statement, a rejection of the expected, a reminder that gods don't need roads. And Dionysus? He's smiling again. The kind of smile that tells you he knows exactly how absurd this is. And he loves it. He leans back, arms wide, and the chariot turns ever so slightly in place, a lazy spiral above the stones. You think, this could all collapse in a second. The wine could sour. The music could stop. The tigers could, frankly, remember that they're tigers. But it doesn't. It floats. It continues. Because that's what Dionysus is about. Not permanence, but persistence. Not structure, but flow. Not logic, but the kind of beauty that only makes sense once you stop trying to explain it. A satyr near you exhales in awe. A maenad whispers a hymn under her breath. And you just watch. Because you know now, this chariot isn't for crossing distance. It's for crossing thresholds between reason and revelry, between the known and the impossible, between who you thought you were and who you're allowed to be. The chariot descends gently. The tigers stretch. Dionysus hops down like someone stepping from a carriage into their own party. He tosses you a grape. You catch it. You don't eat it. Not yet. Because somehow you know, the next step is yours, and the wheels are still turning. You hold the grape in your hand, feeling its weight, small, soft, suspiciously mystical. It pulses faintly, like it's alive. Not breathing exactly, but aware of the moment, of your hesitation, of how many metaphors have already been placed on its round little body. You glance at Dionysus, who watches you not with judgment, but with that eternal amusement that only a god of chaos and Cabernet can wear with grace. He doesn't say, "Eat it." He doesn't say anything. He just raises his eyebrows, which, somehow, is worse. So you eat it. It bursts on your tongue like laughter. Sweet, tart, slightly dizzying. You're not sure if you tasted a fruit or a memory. Either way, you're still here. The chariot glints nearby, the tigers lounging once again, tails flicking like they're keeping time to a beat you can't hear. You walk now, not away, just elsewhere. Through another grove, this one lined with columns, each carved with scenes, of revelry, but in strange combinations. Satyrs playing chess, maenads napping peacefully, Dionysus pouring wine for a lion who looks deeply impressed. And as you pass these images, they shimmer slightly. Almost move. You wonder, are these records? Or invitations? Because that's what Dionysus does. He doesn't just inspire celebration. He dissolves boundaries between people, between past and present, between stone and story, and between sacred and just slightly ridiculous. Which brings you, quite naturally, to the moment you witness next. The chariot has returned. Somehow, without fanfare, just quietly resumed its place like a favorite pillow, and now it's moving again. But not across a plain or a mountaintop, across a banquet. Yes, a full feast. Long wooden tables stretching farther than the eye can see. Platters piled with figs, olives, roasted lamb, loaves of bread still steaming, wine jugs bigger than your torso, people everywhere, laughing, singing, eating, debating the merits of left-handed flute playing. And Dionysus? He rides the chariot, across the table. The wheels roll gently between platters. The tigers step lightly between dishes, never disturbing a single grape. Every so often, one of them pauses to lick something interesting. A meat skewer here, a startled cheese there, before continuing on as if nothing happened. The guests don't scream. They don't scatter. They laugh, because of course Dionysus would ride through a feast on a tiger-drawn chariot. To them, it's not an interruption. It's the highlight. You sit on the edge of the table, or maybe a bench. It's hard to say. Someone hands you a cup. It smells like rosemary and regret. You drink anyway. The person beside you turns and says, "He once rode that thing through a wedding and left with both the bride and the cake." You believe it. The tigers step past you, their fur brushing your shoulder like velvet with very sharp opinions. The chariot follows, its gold leaf trim gleaming in candlelight, and Dionysus raises a hand in salute. The crowd erupts in song. A wild, imperfect, deliciously off-key song about wine, love, and losing your shoes in the name of fun. And you sing along. Not because you know the words, but because it feels like you've known them forever. You lean back. The stars above have multiplied. The moon is lower now, like it's leaning in to listen. And just as you start to relax, you hear someone whisper, "Tomorrow he'll ride it into battle." You laugh, because of course he will, and of course there will be grapes. The feast is still going behind you. A tapestry of clinking cups, impromptu poetry, someone attempting to juggle amphorae while standing on one leg. It's chaotic, charming, and increasingly blurry at the edges, like a dream you keep forgetting, and then remembering again when someone refills your cup. But Dionysus? He's gone. Not dramatically, just gone. Slipped out the side of the scene like he had somewhere better to be, which is impressive, considering he was just the centerpiece of a chariot-driven table stroll. You stand. The earth feels slightly tilted, or maybe your head does. Either way, your feet know what to do. You follow the tiger prints, and they lead, not back into the forest or toward another festival, but to something stranger. A field, wide, flat, and quiet. No vines, no music, just wind. And in the middle of it, the chariot. Stationary now, poised like a general waiting for a signal. The tigers are alert, upright, their bodies tense, but not fearful, like they're anticipating. You squint across the horizon, and there, far off, is a group of soldiers, bronze helmets glinting, spears catching the moonlight, shields round and serious. They're not marching, they're hesitating, because they see it too. A golden chariot drawn by creatures no Greek army ever trained for. A god who doesn't shout orders but hums lullabies that make you question your entire life plan. You move closer, and now you see Dionysus again. He's standing in the chariot, straight-backed, barefoot. No armor, no helmet, just a thyrsus. In his hand, a fennel staff topped with ivy and a pine cone. Not exactly military issue, but his expression? Calm, playful, unshakably sure. You've heard the stories. How he rode into Thrace not with an army, but with dancers. How entire battalions threw down their weapons just to join the parade. How enemy kings woke up days later covered in garlands, unsure if they'd been defeated or seduced. And now you're here. You walk up beside the chariot, and Dionysus glances down at you with that signature look. Part amusement, part challenge, part, you won't believe what happens next. You ask, softly, "Is this really a battle?" And he smiles, because of course it isn't. And it is. This isn't about land or power. It's about interruption, about walking into the middle of violence and saying, Here's an alternative: wine. It sounds absurd, but you can feel it. The tension in the air changing, the soldiers across the field shifting, some lowering their spears, some looking sideways, like maybe this whole war thing wasn't their best idea after all, because what do you do when faced with something so unexplainable? You pause. And in that pause, Dionysus wins. He doesn't need blood, he needs a beat. Break in the rhythm of destruction. A moment where the only thing anyone wants to do is sit down and have a fig. You realize now, the chariot is not for transportation. It's for transformation. A moving ritual. A portable spell. An absurd, golden invitation to step out of order and into ecstasy. And as the soldiers begin to waver, as laughter starts to replace shouting, as one brave soul tosses down their helmet and starts dancing barefoot in the grass, Dionysus leans back. Content, victorious, chariot still gleaming, tigers still purring, and behind him, a world quietly deciding that maybe joy is stronger than conquest after all. The battlefield dissolves without a single drop of blood. You stand in the grass as spears fall gently, one by one, like reeds returning to the riverbed. The soldiers, once sharp-edged with tension, begin to blur. A few laugh, a few cry. One kneels to pick a daisy and seems surprised it's real. And all the while, the chariot waits, unmoved but not still. Because stillness, with Dionysus, is never static. It hums. You step closer to the god himself, expecting some kind of speech, a declaration of peace, maybe a monologue about the futility of war and the supremacy of wine, but he just picks up a bunch of grapes, tosses one in the air, and catches it in his mouth with the ease of someone who knows they'll never miss. And that's the lesson, isn't it? He doesn't conquer. He redirects. No shouting, no demands. Just a chariot pulled by wild things, and the subtle suggestion that the world doesn't have to hurt all the time. You watch as the tigers stretch again, their movements fluid and slow, tails flicking like brush strokes across the grass. One of them yawns with a sound that seems to open the sky slightly, like the clouds themselves exhaled. The procession has started again. You didn't notice at first, but the maenads are dancing once more, spinning and laughing with no music but their own heartbeat. The satyrs are back, two of them trying to build a flute out of battlefield debris. One soldier is helping. And you? You walk beside the chariot now. Not in awe, in rhythm. It creaks softly as it rolls, gold catching the sun that's beginning to lower again, throwing long shadows that stretch into the shape of stories. You glance back once more, the battlefield empty now, transformed into something gentler. Where the fighting might have happened, there are footprints and petals, and someone has left behind a shield that's been painted with ivy. You turn forward again, and the landscape changes. Mountains now, purple and distant, a narrow path winding upward. The procession becomes single file, laughter quieter now. Not gone, just concentrated. Like honey instead of wine. The tigers don't slow. They walk steadily, their paws finding purchase on stone, their presence unshaken by the shift in terrain. Dionysus rides slightly reclined, the wind tousling his hair just so, which is unfair, frankly. You've been climbing for 10 minutes and you look like a rumpled curtain. But he glows. Not dramatically, just enough to remind you he's the one holding the center of the spiral. And still, no reins. You ask yourself again, how do the tigers know where to go? And again, the answer comes. Not in words, but in feeling. They follow pleasure, not laziness, not indulgence, but something deeper, something ancient, something that says, "This way feels alive." And that's where the chariot goes. Always. You pass a spring where someone has stacked stones in a spiral. A maenad adds a fig to the top without breaking stride. A satyr hums into a shell. A former soldier gently carries a jug of wine like it's something sacred, which, right now, it is. The mountain doesn't get steeper, but you begin to feel lighter, not weightless, just unburdened. You've walked away from a battlefield and toward something softer, stranger, more free. And in front of you, the tigers keep walking, like they've been here before. And know that, at the top of this mountain, is something worth the climb. The path coils higher, narrow and sun-warmed, each curve bringing you closer to something unnamed, but unmistakably sacred. The air is thinner now, not from lack of breath, but from too much sky, the kind of height that makes your thoughts quieter just out of respect, and still the chariot climbs. Not pulled, not pushed, escorted. By tigers, yes, but also by the collective momentum of everyone who's followed it this far. Maenads and musicians, warriors and wanderers, you and the you before this journey. Dionysus stands again. He hasn't spoken once. He hasn't needed to. Every turn of a wheel, every sideways glance from a tiger, every vine curling where no vine was before. That's his language. But now he lifts a hand, and the procession pauses. The path has led to a ridge, wide and flat, overlooking everything, valleys below, vineyards in the distance, and in the far-off haze, the shimmer of a sea that may or may not be real. The chariot stops in the center of it all, its golden trim catching the last of the afternoon sun. This is the kind of place myths are born in, or buried, or both. And Dionysus, he steps down, not gracefully, but deliberately, like someone who's walked 1,000 stages and knows exactly where to put his heel for maximum effect. He kneels. Yes, kneels. Right there in the dust, beside one of the tigers. He places his palm flat on the earth. The entire ridge seems to hush in response. And then, vines. They erupt, not violently, but exuberantly, like they've been waiting for centuries just below the surface. They bloom from cracks, spiral up stones, unfurling leaves that shimmer like they've been kissed by moonlight and fermented sunlight. Grapes swell, blossoms open. The very mountain begins to smell like a midsummer feast. And you don't clap. You can't. That would be like applauding a sunrise. You simply watch, wide-eyed, as the ridge transforms into a living altar. Dionysus stands again. His robe is now green with ivy, his brow crowned with leaves that may have grown there just now. In one hand, a goblet. In the other, nothing. Because, what more does he need? The procession gathers. No one speaks, not even the satyrs. Even they know something sacred is unfolding. Dionysus raises the goblet. You expect a toast, a blessing, a riddle maybe. But instead, he pours. Right there, into the earth. A slow trickle of dark wine so rich it glows. The liquid seeps into the soil, and you swear you can hear the roots beneath it hum. The wind stills. The tigers close their eyes. The moment is complete. This is not sacrifice. It's sharing. A god offering his joy back to the land that bore it. And it hits you. That's what the chariot was for. Not battle, not spectacle. Connection. To bring joy where it had been forgotten. To bring vines where there had been dust. To bring rhythm back to places hardened by silence. You exhale slowly, a breath you didn't know you were holding. Dionysus turns, not to the crowd, not to the sky, but to you. And he winks, not flirtatiously, but like someone who knows you've finally caught up. You bow your head, not out of duty, out of understanding. The ridge is still now, but not still. It waits, because once the wine hits the root, the story never really ends. It just keeps blooming. The vines keep growing long after the goblet has emptied. Not fast, just persistently, like they've remembered what they're here for. They twist around old stones, curl between the toes of statues, climb the legs of startled satyrs who decide this is probably fine and begin incorporating it into their dancing. And all the while, Dionysus watches, not possessively, more like a gardener who plants a single seed and knows the garden will handle the rest. The tigers lie down beside him again, paws tucked under, heads held high. Their eyes scan the ridge like sentinels, but not for danger, for rhythm, for the shift in the air that tells them when it's time to move again. But not yet. Not just yet. You walk slowly through the growing vineyard, your fingers brushing. Leaves that smell like summer and myth. Each step feels like something soft is wrapping around your ankles, not to trap you, but to hold you, to remind you that you're still here. You think, this chariot has been everywhere, to cities, to feasts, to forests, battlefields, and now, to the top of the world. But where did it begin? You pause beside a newly sprouted fig tree, its leaves already wide and confident, and try to picture it. The very first chariot, the very first tigers. The very first time someone saw a god rolling through their village and thought, I should probably dance now. You've heard versions of the story. Some say Dionysus built the chariot himself, fashioned from gold and cedar, with wheels blessed by Hephaestus and lined with poems instead of spokes. Others say it was given to him by India as a gift of awe and confusion after he turned a dry desert into a blooming jungle with nothing but his feet and a jug of wine. And still others say it wasn't built at all. It simply appeared one day, pulled by creatures no one had seen before, following. A man no one could remember inviting, and honestly, that feels the most accurate. Because the chariot doesn't belong to a timeline. It belongs to a feeling. To the exact moment when something ordinary becomes different. When a road turns into a dance floor. When a field becomes a feast. When God doesn't descend from the sky. He rolls in from the side, late, barefoot, laughing, and somehow still more divine than anyone else in the room. You walk back toward it now, and the wheels shine like they're remembering every road they've ever touched. Dionysus is already reclining again. He doesn't look tired. He looks timeless, like he's always just finished arriving. You sit beside the chariot's edge. No one tells you not to. The tigers shift to make room. One of them rests its massive head near your feet, a gesture of such casual trust that your breath hitches slightly. And then, a sound. Not music exactly, but movement. The vines begin to part behind the ridge, curling aside like curtains. And, down below, a village, unassuming. Quiet. Clay rooftops and olive groves, children chasing chickens, grandmothers pounding herbs. A town not expecting anything unusual to happen. Dionysus stretches. You can feel what's coming. The chariot is about to roll again, because joy, left too long in one place, turns stale. And Dionysus? He keeps it moving. Not to escape, but to share. And you? You rise slowly, brushing dust from your robes, and step into place beside a tiger. The path down has already begun to form, golden, curved, lined with petals that weren't there a moment ago. Because this story isn't finished. It's just looking for its next audience. You begin your descent from the ridge, not quickly. There's no need for speed in a Dionysian procession. The road curves gently, like it's being drawn in real time by the wheels of the chariot, unfurling beneath the tiger's paws. Each step forward feels like a soft agreement with gravity, the kind of walking that feels more like gliding, like the mountain is letting you down slowly. Behind you, the vines still grow. The ridge remains crowned in green. But before you, the village awaits, and it still has no idea what's coming. At first, the people notice only the music, faint, irregular, winding its way into their kitchens and courtyards like an idea you can't quite forget. A child pauses mid-chase. A baker looks up from her kneading. Somewhere, a goat blinks as if it suddenly remembers it was once worshipped. Then they see the chariot, golden, glowing, rolling steadily toward the village on a road that didn't exist yesterday. Drawn by tigers, followed by dancers, crowned by vines, and carrying a god who looks like he might bless you or kiss you or drink your wine and leave before the bottle's empty. And any of those outcomes would be fine. And here's the best part. No one runs, no one screams, because the presence of Dionysus doesn't bring fear. It brings suspension, of doubt, of rules, of the voice in your head that says not now and act normal and don't wear that in public. You walk beside the chariot as it enters the village square. Children climb olive trees for a better view. Old men squint like they're trying to remember a dream they had 50 years ago. And Dionysus? He raises no hand. He makes no grand speech. He simply steps off the chariot, barefoot as always, and plucks a fig from a nearby tree, a tree that you're almost certain was not there 5 seconds ago. He takes a bite, and the village shifts, not visibly, but viscerally. A market stall suddenly fills with fresh grapes. A cracked fountain begins to sing. A woman in a faded apron starts humming, then dancing, then laughing, and no one stops her. This isn't invasion, it's invitation. To let go. To remember. To move a little more like the music matters. You look up at the rooftops, where someone is stringing garlands from chimney to chimney. A potter has abandoned his wheel and now paints ivy leaves on every bowl. Even the town crier is reciting wine poetry in a surprisingly emotional tone. And yet, it's all gentle. No madness. Just ease. Just joy rediscovered like an old friend. You forgot you missed. The tigers lie down again, in the middle of the square, like oversized tabby cats at peace with their fame. Children approach them slowly, arms outstretched, and one tiger allows a grape to be placed delicately on its nose. It doesn't blink. Of course not. It's a tiger. But it's also part of the myth now. You find yourself smiling again. Not because anything grand happened, but because something soft did. This is what Dionysus does. He doesn't destroy. He dissolves. Barriers, roles, tension. He lets the world forget what it was, for just long enough to remember what it could be. You sit near the chariot again, your back against its warm, gilded wheel. The sky above the village is pink now, turning purple at the edges, and the air tastes faintly of time and wine-soaked possibility. You close your eyes for just a moment, and in that moment, you hear the softest sound. Wheels beginning to roll, again, because the chariot never stays too long. There's always another town, another heart, another dusty road waiting for vines. The village grows quieter now, not because the celebration has ended, but because it's settled, the way a song does when it reaches its final verse. The rhythm still plays, but softer, like footsteps in dew. The laughter lingers, but it wraps around corners like the smoke of a dying fire. Sweet, slow, full. You sit on the edge of the square, watching. Children have fallen asleep curled beside tigers. The baker is dancing with the butcher, and neither of them seems to remember. They argued about grain prices just yesterday. A jug of wine floats gently through the air between hands, refilling itself when no one's looking. And in the center of it all, the chariot. Still, silent, and yet somehow humming. Its golden trim is dimmer now, not dulled, but relaxed. Like it knows it's done its job. Like it's smiling, if chariots could smile. And Dionysus? He's already walking again. Barefoot, of course. Robe now green with dust and flower petals. He moves through the people like mist, pausing here and there, a hand on a shoulder, a touch to a cheek, a single grape placed in someone's palm without explanation. No words. No farewell. Just presence. You follow him instinctively, though. Your feet are heavy in that comfortable way they get when a long journey is winding down. The path he takes curves gently away from the village, past the olive trees, through a narrow gate you're certain wasn't there earlier. And then, you're outside again. The stars are above you, countless and quiet. The world has dimmed. Even the crickets seem to hum a lullaby. The procession has thinned. Many have stayed behind. Some drifted away in laughter. Some simply melted into the memory of the feast. That's how it works with Dionysus. He doesn't collect followers. He leaves them full. The chariot waits at the edge of the world now. The tigers are already in place. But this time there is no crowd, no music, just the soft sound of wind moving through fig leaves. And you, Dionysus, turns to you, not dramatically, just knowingly, as if to ask, wasn't that better than expected? You nod, because of course it was. He climbs aboard. The chariot glows one last time, faint and golden, like a firefly at rest. The wheels begin to turn, not quickly, not with thunder, but slowly, gently, like a lullaby rolling over the horizon. You stand, still for a while, letting the silence settle in your bones, letting the vines that have grown inside you during this journey find their final place. And as the chariot fades into the dark, drawn by tigers, crowned in quiet, led by a god who never needed to speak, you feel something unfurl inside you, a stillness, a softness, a smile. The stars blink slower now. The earth breathes deeply. And somewhere in the vines, a flute plays the last note of the story. Then stillness. Then peace. Then sleep.